What is up? Good morning and welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot. This is Club Fantasy's weekly mock draft show, and I am your host, Ryan Weisse. We are back for yet another Dynasty Startup, but we are going to change things up a little bit this week because I am tired of all this super flex, and I want to see what it's like if we only have to have one QB in Dynasty. So that's a little preview of the draft. It's going to be a really good show. With me, as always, Austin Amandolia. Austin, how are you doing this great Monday morning?
Doing great. My goal is to do better than last week's mock and just improve, because I did not like my team by the end of the draft last week. So that's the whole goal, is just do better.
I love that, because in all honesty, that should be your goal. That's the whole point of these mocks. But I love that you brought up that you didn't like your team, because I play in so many mock drafts where everybody loves their team afterward, and they can't wait to say, I wish this was a real league. I wish this was a real league. And then I'll do mock drafts on purpose where I'm never zero running back guy, but I'll mock zero running back. And I'm like, I hate this team. And if it were a real league, I would find a way to quit immediately. And I'll never forget, I did a show 2 years ago where the host was like, I love this so much, we're going to turn this into a real league. And I'm like, oh my God, I would have drafted so much differently.
Yeah, you can't do that to people, man.
And there you go, guys. And our guest this week is Club Fantasy's first Dynasty writer. I'm pretty sure we're starting to kick off this Dynasty thing.
I'll take it.
I was going to say, I think we're starting to kick this Dynasty thing off bigger and better this year, but you're the OG, Drew. Andrew Metcalfe, welcome to the show, buddy. I think this is the first time I've had you on the mock draft show. We've talked about it, but I have no problem telling people behind the scenes, if I have a Dynasty question, Drew is my first DM, because he is my Dynasty guy. So Drew, introduce yourself to the people. Tell everybody know how you're doing.
Yo, what's up, y'all? Thanks for having me on. But yeah, I actually haven't done many mocks or any mocks yet this year, so I'm actually interested to kind of look into to see what sleeper ADP is looking like. I've been living in underdog these days, so kind of a nice to mix it up a little bit, get back into that startup mindset.
Even better is that's a great segue to next week's episode. Spoiler alert. So,
is that right?
But yeah, we talked a little bit about that last week, where a lot, or maybe 2 weeks ago, where a lot of folks are preferring just doing underdog to even mock drafting anymore, because there's a little bit of skin in the game. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. So Drew is with us, and of course we have Austin, and we also have a mock draft. So this week, guys, we are doing a 10-team, one quarterback, and we're going to talk about this as the show gets started. It's half PPR. But I wanted to go with one quarterback this week, and I wanted to go 10-team because it's kind of counterproductive. Normally, if it's a 10-team, you definitely want two quarterbacks. If it's a 12-team, that's when you'll see people flirt with one quarterback. But I'm an agent of chaos, and I wanted to see things be a little different this week. And so that is what we are going with. I'm going to go ahead and get the draft started, and then we're going to start asking some questions. Our buddy Jacob Lundy is starting the draft off, and he is already in the room, so I'm certain we're going to get a pick and not a timeout. Actually, I don't think we've had a timeout this season yet, Austin.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah, exactly. And there we go. Justin Jefferson starts us off, but we're not going to talk about the draft yet. I want to talk about one quarterback versus superflex, Drew. So superflex has been kind of the flavor of forever for Dynasty anymore. I feel like everybody wants to get away from one quarterback. You and I, Drew, are in a one quarterback dynasty, but we're also in two superflex dynasties together. So I want to just really talk about, I want to first have you, do you have a preference? I have a friend who has just started playing in Dynasty a little bit and despises Superflex. He just doesn't like that. In real NFL, they don't start two quarterbacks. He's just like a purist when it comes to that. Do you have a preference, and why would you have a preference when it comes to Superflex versus one QB, Drew?
So to be honest, I know a lot of people ask these type of questions about, Dynasty versus redraft and superflex and one QB, but I kind of think of it as meals. Like I like chicken, I like beef, I like shrimp. Like I don't want to eat the same thing every day. So I kind of have a mix of everything, and even throw some best ball in there too. So to be honest, I mean, I guess if I had to, just choose one and get rid of all my leagues, I would go Dynasty, just because I kind of like the strategic aspect in the long term looking at it. But no, I like it all of the above. I'll take it all.
Yeah, we definitely do not league shame on this show. I want to be very clear. Drew, if you want to turn your notifications off, if you don't mind.
I got it. I think I found it.
All right, perfect. But we do not league shame. We are open to everything, and that's really going to be the focus of the summer. If you've never watched this show, when I do my redraft mocks, I set up some very weird league settings because I want to show you guys some different ways of playing fantasy football and how you can still have fun with a basic draft. So I love that you said, let's have a lot of meals, not just one meal. But Austin, going back to the one quarterback versus superflex, do you have a preference when it comes to your dynasty leagues? Do you like to focus on two QB? I know people out there are like, I won't join a dynasty if it's one quarterback.
Yeah, I'm not to that level. I I kind of flex. I'm similar to Drew. I'm just like, I'm good down for whatever. I like leagues. And so you send me some settings, I'll play them almost no matter what. I think it does depend a little bit on league size. So a 10-teamer, I do lean a little bit more towards wanting super flex just because you have to put more quarterbacks in the queue and it gets you a little bit more depth at quarterback. And then 12-teamers, I'm more comfortable doing single quarterback because it starts to get slim pickings once you get outside of the top half quarterbacks. And then, I mean, I have my home league's an 8-team league, and that one I like making it. We've made it 2 quarterbacks, specifically 2 quarterbacks, not super flex, so that you exactly. And so that's nice because it locks in like you have to have 2 quarterbacks and it brings in more players. Whereas like we talked last week, we said there are 7 elite quarterbacks. So in an 8-team league, like adding that second quarterback position feels kind of necessary to create more strategy there.
You actually hit on a question that I was not planning on asking in this show, and I am going to add it to the show sheet right now. And just so everyone's aware for how great my guests are on this show, these guys have no idea what questions I'm going to ask them. The draft guides most of the show, and then I just come up with questions on the fly. And as we all know, it's usually questions to help my Dynasty League, but this one is not. Austin, you mentioned that when you have a smaller league, 8 teams, you like to require 2 quarterbacks. So Drew, I'm going to start with you on this one. Do you, every super flex draft you're in, do you look at it as a 2 QB draft? Like, do you know you have to walk out? And this can be redraft or dynasty, just your feelings on super flex in general. Or are you okay with 1 really good quarterback and maybe starting an extra wide receiver? Must it be a quarterback in that super flex spot?
This is actually a really good question, and it's probably one of the more recent lessons that I had to learn myself with playing Superflex. So I would say like a few years ago, I probably would tell you that, yeah, definitely you got to have 2, probably even 3. I would say 3 quarterbacks at least when you're into the draft. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think you end up hurting yourself when you kind of insert these, bland or second, third tier quarterbacks just to have a quarterback in that super flex spot, as opposed to, one of these high upside running backs or wide receivers. So I think in startups, the main thing I want to focus on is just grabbing assets that will like appreciate in value. So whether it's a quarterback or, wide receiver or running back, like guys like Jimmy G, yeah, they might help you out this year, but when Dynasty in a startup, like I said, especially when you're top, 6 or 7 rounds or so, you just want to make sure you're getting assets they're gonna appreciate. And a lot of times, like after the first 2 rounds, it's not where the quarterbacks are going to be. So I would say, over the last year or so, I'm fine with just having that one solid quarterback.
I really like that because I feel like when you play Superflex, Austin, everybody walks in knowing you have to go quarterback with your first 2 picks and you better walk out with 3 quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. But really, that's 2 quarterback advice. That's treating the Superflex with 2 quarterback lenses, if you will. So my question to you, Austin, is kind of the same thing: is it okay to walk out of a Superflex draft with just 2 quarterbacks and let a wide receiver fill in for your bye weeks?
I think it depends a lot on the scoring system and the league context. But I mean, I'm all about going a different direction when everybody's doing the same thing. Like, why not try a different strategy? I do feel like I would want at least that 3rd quarterback just to handle the bye weeks. But if you have to put a receiver in for 1 week as a bye week, like you still may be able to hit the upside. And while everybody's going after 2 quarterbacks, like you're getting the elite receivers and the elite running backs. So sure, why not take the chance, get 2 quarterbacks, and if nothing else, you're going to have assets that other people don't have and can trade later on in the season if necessary.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from what both of you just said is appreciating assets. Make sure you're taking the thing that's going to have the most value. I'm going to drag us back to the this 1 QB draft, but I do want to just kind of draw highlights to one thing here. Scampers has pointed out that Faith is auto drafting on us. So I want to place a small wager here. Which round is it where Faith is in the chat telling us how she never got a notification that the draft started? So Austin, what's your guess? I'm going to say 7.
Is that the over under?
Yes.
Oof. I'm going to say
or does she never show up?
Oh, that would be something. I'm gonna go before the fifth round is over.
All right. You going higher or lower, Andrew?
Yeah, I was gonna say round 4.
Okay.
I'll give Faith some faith.
I say it's all love. I'm saying 7th, but I think her not showing up, because I know Faith also has a hectic job where she may have just got called into work at the last minute. But enough about that. Before we jump into the draft and actually start looking at some of these picks being made, the last question, and Andrew, you actually already kind of hit on this. And I know you said variety is the spice of life. But let's just really talk about dynasty versus redraft and how they each have their own home. But I think there are a lot of folks out there who have played redraft their entire lives and are kind of scared of what the commitment is moving into dynasty. So I guess talk about how, the change. How long have you been playing dynasty? And were you one of the rare folks who played dynasty first, or had you start with redraft and moved your way in?
So am I starting this one?
Yeah, this is all you, Drew, but I do want to quickly throw out. It was round 3. We were all way too late. Round 3, and I told you it would be her phone not notifying her. We love you, Faith.
Oh, you nailed it.
All right, Drew, go for it, man.
All right, so we're talking dynasty versus redraft.
Yeah,
okay,
did you start off playing dynasty, or how was the transition from redraft into dynasty?
I was in high school. I think like a senior in high school, my very first dynasty league. So it was like 2007, 2008.
Wow.
No, I'm sorry. I said dynasty. My very first fantasy league.
Oh, okay,
my first dynasty startup was like the end of 2017. So yeah, I mean, I had a good few years of playing redraft. But if I had to peg it down to one reason that I would prefer dynasty over redraft, it's just the injuries. So I would say this: how many times have you had this stat redraft team, and then you just like Christian McCaffrey goes down, your top 2 receivers, and you're just like, oh man, if I just had one more shot with this squad, like I think I could run it. But I mean, with dynasty, that's what it is. Like one horrible, terrible year. One, you actually get an early draft pick, so you can actually.
I was going to say
but then like next year, like you get clean slate, and all of that hard work you did to assemble that team, like it's still there for you to go after it. So that's probably one of the main aspects that I like. Like you don't have to put all this work into building this team and kind of have to just tear it back down and start over the next.
I like that. There's a resilience and there's a. This is going to sound awful, but there's a reward at the end of the rainbow for losing. Like if things go wrong for you, that you get Bijan Robinson the next year. Austin, when did you start playing Dynasty?
So last year was actually my first year playing Dynasty. I'd primarily just done redraft before then, and I like a little bit of both. Dynasty, it's just a different strategy, it's a different mindset going into it because you're trying to. You have a lot of decisions. You could say win now, you could say win in 3 years, and you could try and like do a little bit of both, win every year, which is like what I try and do, and it's probably gonna shoot me in the foot at some point. Redraft though is like it's my first love with fantasy. I started playing in like 2013 or so, and the thing that I love about it is just like every year is different, and you get a chance every year to assemble a new team, take a different strategy, overreact from the last season, underreact. Like there's just so many directions you can go. And it's really fun because you also get multiple bites at the apple without having to do the year-long roster management that comes with Dynasty. Like I think I have 4 Dynasty leagues now, and just managing those 4 teams is plenty year round. But redraft, it's like, I can try multiple things in multiple places. If I miss one player somewhere, I'll just go get a new redraft league and get them there. And
there you go.
So I'm all about it.
I actually just thought of a really good kind of comparison for anybody that's gamers. So I would say Dynasty is kind of like Battlefield if you're into shooters, and the redraft is like Call of Duty. It's like the arcade level. You just go out there, dual wielding AK-47. It's like blasting, having fun. But Battlefield is just kind of more of that, strategic. You got to think about, what moves you're making now that kind of might affect you down the road. But a lot of people, they like to play both of them.
I was going to say there's room for both. And I think that's the main aspect. Drew, this one is just for you because Austin hears this question every single week and we talk about it every single week. One of the things that kind of doesn't translate to dynasty mock drafting is the fact that you cannot trade any of your startup picks. And if you've never done a dynasty startup, you're going to be inundated with trade offers. I'm in a dynasty startup right now. For the first time in my entire life, I started playing dynasty 6 years ago. I am, for the first time ever, trading back and acquiring 2024 picks in a dynasty. I've never done it before. It felt really dirty. My team is actually coming together quite well. But Drew, are you a trade up? Are you a trade back? Do you stand pat like Austin? What is your take when it comes to trades in a dynasty startup?
So yeah, I'm kind of going back and forth through both of them. It kind of just depends on the room and how the draft goes. I know like over the last couple of years, I've been kind of joining more, I guess what you would call, analyst leagues or so.
Yeah.
And it seems like everybody wants to trade back. It's like, especially in the first two rounds, like everybody's on the clock, like, all right, open the traded back and getting offers. So it's kind of hard to do it when everybody else is. So what I do is I kind of just, I'll set my queue kind of in tiers. And if I have like these tiers of player that, all right, I'm fine with taking any of these guys in the third round. Once that kind of dwindles down and there's maybe, a couple left, then I have no problem trying to trade up to get one of the last guys in that tier. And on the other hand, if I'm, on the clock and I'm like, man, I can take like 8 of these guys and I would have no problem with it. That's when I'll see, all right, let me see who, wants to sneak up a little bit right there. So that's kind of how I approach it on like a round-to-round basis.
Yeah, I ended up in it's a 10-team super flex, and I ended up with the 9th pick where I looked at it as 8 elite quarterbacks. And so I took Justin Jefferson. It came back around to me at 12, and I took Travis Kelce. So my whole idea was to win this year.
But you're going to win now.
But then people started offering me trades. And I was like, you know what? I've never done this before. There's nobody I really want. I wasn't too happy with the quarterbacks. And so I negotiated a trade with somebody, and so I sent a counter offer. Well, immediately after that, someone else sent me an offer, but I thought it was a counter offer to my original offer. So I ended up trading my 3rd and 4th round picks without paying attention because the 3rd round trade had already went through. I was like, well, I guess this is what I'm doing now. And so I ended up trading back a bunch, and now I have 5 picks in next year's first round, but I actually still like my team. It's a super flex. And in the 8th round, I was able to land Jordan Love and Kenny Pickett. And I'm like, I'm not necessarily out of this yet, so I'm real interested here to see how this shakes out.
I love how the story started. It's like, I tried trading back for once, but then in actuality, it's like, I accidentally started
I was going to do one. I didn't. So after my 2nd round pick, I didn't pick again until the 8th round. That's how crazy I got.
Oh, man. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was weird. I didn't love it. And now everybody thinks now everyone thinks I'm going to give Travis Kelce away. And it's like, no, I'm still going to beat you this year with Travis Kelce. That's how my life is right now.
It's such a cheat code, man.
All right, guys, back to this draft and the 1 quarterback. And I'm kind of glad this shook out the way it did. So Drew, when in a dynasty 1 quarterback draft, is it acceptable to start looking quarterback? And I don't think either one of you, I don't have the draft very big on my screen, but you haven't. Neither one of you have went quarterback yet. When is it too early to land a guy like Mahomes in the 2nd round? Because he's probably your quarterback for the next 5 years. Jalen Hurts ahead of Josh Allen was a little surprising to me, but when do you start looking quarterback? And I understand in a real draft, you would never tell somebody when you're going to go quarterback before you actually go quarterback. But this is mock drafting, and this is about teaching people. Is the 2nd round too early for a quarterback? And yes, that was an auto pick by Faith. I do want to throw that out there. No, I'm sorry. The Patrick Mahomes was an auto pick, so I know she didn't choose to go.
Oh, I thought you meant, okay.
Yeah,
I got you.
No, not another one.
So for me, it's just once all of the running backs and wide receivers that are left, I don't really see any like legit top 10 upside over the last couple of years. Over the next couple of years, that's when I'll like, all right, I'm not excited about any of these running backs or receivers. So all right, I'll kind of start looking at the quarterback. So that means in a 1 QB, I'm pretty much never going to get one of the top 4, probably even 5 guys now. There goes Burrow. So yeah, that's kind of what I look at. It's always going to be secondary to the running backs and wide receivers in single QB.
So Austin, we talked a lot about the elite quarterbacks last week, and you had it at 7. I think I had it at 8. Are you looking to walk away with one of those guys, or do you wait a little bit?
I think it depends a little bit on the league size. So in a 12-teamer, I would have that cutoff after the top 7 because that's where I have the cutoff of the elite quarterbacks, and I'm just looking to get one before those 7 are all gone. Now, in a 10-teamer, there's 2 less teams. I'm going to look to end the quarterback run. So whenever I see that there's about 7 to 9 quarterbacks on the board, that's when I'm going to start looking for a quarterback and just be the last team to take a quarterback. Cause I think there's enough quarterback depth that I can wait and still get a decent quarterback. And in the meantime, get a bunch of elite players at the other positions.
And I think that speaks to something, Drew, and it's something you hit on earlier, is players who are going to appreciate in value. I think there's going to be a temptation later on in this draft to be the first team to take that second elite quarterback. But if you've never played in a 1 QB dynasty, you don't realize how quarterbacks depreciate in value. If you don't have a team who is on the cusp of winning a championship, they're not going to buy that second elite quarterback off of you. It's just not going to happen.
Nope.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the same in redraft, right? We always talk about like don't draft a quarterback in redraft leagues, and I feel similarly even in a dynasty league where like there's enough depth there, and really you need someone who's going to be consistent and get you 20 points a week. And there, to me, the elite quarterbacks, there's a little bit less of a premium on them in a single quarterback startup.
Yeah, no, keep going.
No, I was just going to add, sorry, I think quarterback is kind of going to be a little fascinating, especially in single QB this season in particular, because we're coming off of a year where we had 3 guys that were just had like
they ran away with it.
Just had incredible seasons. And like in years past, so like last season, for example, I was loading up on like Justin Fields in the mid rounds. And even before that, like, Jalen Hurts was a value before he broke out. Lamar Jackson right after his rookie year. But now I'm not sure we're going to get that anymore. Like, I mean, we'll see where, I don't like talking about players before their pick, but where Anthony Richardson goes.
It's perfectly allowed on this show.
I think in years past, guys like Richardson would just fall and you get him late. But now, like I've seen some drafts where he's already gone as like a top, 5 or 6 quarterback because we've experienced those big waves from the rushing guys. So I am kind of curious to see how things will start shaking out this year because there might kind of be a little bit of a shift and people will kind of like start reaching on those quarterbacks and to be harder and harder to find value.
Drew, I'm going to put you on the spot like I did Austin last week. Who are in your opinion, who are the elite dynasty quarterbacks heading into 2023?
And Drew, you're on the clock right now too. So I'm going to
let me
bail you out.
You make your pick first, Drew. That's the more important thing. But I put Austin on the spot last week, and it was Fields you left off, if I remember correctly, Austin. We agreed. I think there are 8. Austin said there were 7, and he left Fields off because this is more of a prove it year for Justin Fields. And so, Drew, I would ask you that same question. Well, first and foremost, let me just let you defend yourself. Did you pick George Kittle or did it auto pick George Kittle?
No, it didn't. Actually, I picked George Kittle.
Okay, perfect. Because I know they give you a little like 10-second buffer.
No.
But who would you say are the elite quarterbacks heading into 2023?
Actually, let me just pull up the list.
Yeah, please take your time. I was gonna say, but I'm definitely putting you on the spot with this one. You had no idea this question was coming, and I'm asking you to list off. It better be 8 guys. No, I'm joking.
All right, so obviously since we got Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Burrow.
Yeah, I think those 4 nobody's gonna debate. It's the next.
And Lamar Jackson is still in that tier for me. Like Lamar Jackson, like now that the contract stuff is out of the way, so we got 5 as far as those are the top. Top end elites.
Okay.
So I mean, were you just saying?
Let me throw these 3 names at you. And do you consider any of the rookies? The rookies, are we considering any of them elite, having not played it down? But more importantly, Justin Herbert, Justin Fields, and Trevor Lawrence. Where do you stand on those 3? Are they working their way into elite? Are these guys you have to have on your team if you're trying to build a winner, or do they still need to show you something?
Yeah, I think to be honest, Trevor Lawrence would probably be towards the top of that list. And he's probably like the more like the borderline because I think he kind of showed what we want to see from Herbert and Justin Fields this year. I think he showed that last year. Plus, he's adding like Calvin Ridley to the mix. Yeah. So I would say like if we're probably like 2 or 3 months in the season, I'm probably we'll be fine with adding Trevor Lawrence to that top tier. But I think with Fields, I think we still need to see that the next step as a passer, so that we know he's gonna ball out for fantasy. Like that's like no question. As long as he's starting, he's the top 4 or 5 quarterback. But in Dynasty, we obviously want him to have that longevity and have a role. And I know me personally, I've always been a Fields guy. I was high on him kind of coming into the year. So I think DJ Moore will do nothing but help that. Because he was throwing to a lot of guys that would struggle to make an NFL roster right now. But I think we do need to still kind of see more of that consistency and just kind of cut down on like the plays where it's just like, what the hell is he doing?
Where he just misses wide open wide receivers.
Yeah,
or see them.
Yeah, it still needs a little bit some of that pocket awareness too. Because I know he fumbled a lot too. There would be times where he just kind of drifting or whatever and didn't realize a defender is coming behind him. So again, I think we still need to see that from him. And again, Herbert, I kind of want to see a bounce back with the new offense too, just to see if he can kind of get back to where he was before.
I love that you brought that up with Herbert because I think after his rookie year, and I'm one, people were ready just to lift Herbert up into elite, but he really took a step back last year. He did not look great, and obviously there were injuries and things like that. And then Josh is kind of more in agreement with Austin's list, though. He has Fields up there. Actually, no, he's in agreement with my list because he has the 8. So yeah, I think it's really interesting with Fields because we all know what a rushing quarterback does in fantasy football, but we also know that they get hurt. And I think that's the thing people are a little worried about. We saw Fields miss time last year. And so I think we just want to see more longevity and, an MVP season like we saw out of Lamar Jackson. I think that would.
Another thing I was going to say with Herbert, I want to say he was kind of propped up by some rushing touchdowns too his first couple of years.
And he did nothing on the ground last year.
Yeah, he had 4 or 5 each year. And if you're not like a, constant rusher, you can't really bank on that. Let me see where I'm going here.
Okay, you make your pick because actually I have my next question. And I'm kind of glad the draft shook out the way it did, Austin, even though one of them was an auto pick. But I'm not too worried about it being an auto pick because we can talk about ADP in general. I think the mighty have fallen when it comes to Jonathan Taylor, and to see him go 8th in this draft as the 4th running back. Now, we talked a lot last week about should running backs even be going early in Dynasty, but to see Austin Eckler go ahead of Jonathan Taylor and arguably Christian McCaffrey go ahead of Jonathan Taylor. Now, obviously, we have Perez starting off with a McCaffrey-Kelsey build. That's a build to win this season for sure. However, my question is more about Jonathan Taylor. Where should he be going, and should Austin Eckler's ADP be ahead of Jonathan Taylor's in Dynasty? That seems ridiculous. I have this set up as Dynasty half PPR ADP, and that does not feel right to me.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I mean, it depends. First off, we should say Austin Eckler was an auto pick, so we'll talk to Sleeper about that. But that's also based on ADP.
That's about ADP, exactly.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing it. They're taking them.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of this tendency to overreact to players that have been injured. Like we saw it with Christian McCaffrey after his 2 seasons. We saw it with Saquon Barkley. Arguably, we're seeing it with Breece Hall right now. We're also seeing it with Jonathan Taylor. And I do agree. I think he should be higher up in ADP. I feel good taking like AJ Brown before him. Like I think there's a different conversation to be had about receiver versus running back in the first round. But just looking at the running backs, I think I would want to take Jonathan Taylor over Austin Eckler just because of the longevity I'm going to get from him. Like Austin Eckler, he's 28 now? He's 28. And he has been taking a lot of snaps. He's about to get to the point where either the Chargers are going to start sharing the load with other running backs, as they've been attempting to do, or he's going to start getting hurt more frequently and aging out, and you're going to get less production from him. So I agree. I would like to see Taylor going ahead of Eckler.
Drew, I'm going to have you continue in there, but I just want to commend Faith Enos for just leaning into the oops of the draft. She's going to have some words for me at the end of the show because she says she would have taken Eckler over JT, and we'll just talk about that in about half an hour, folks. Anyway, Drew, what's your take on Jonathan Taylor's dynasty value right now?
Yep, I'm with you, Austin. It's 100%. It's the injuries, and it's so funny how psychological fantasy is. I think we've seen what happened to like Todd Gurley, David Johnson, and Le'Veon Bell from being like on top of the world, a couple injuries, and then they're just poof. I think we're just afraid that's going to happen. So anytime, like you said, it happened to CMC, it happened to Saquon. Anytime those injured running backs start to get banged up, people just want to move off them. But honestly, between when I was at 5 or 6 at my pick at 5, I was between JT or CeeDee Lamb. But the reason I went with the wide receiver is because you will see some of the running backs that are still available that I'm probably going to start snagging here. I think when you look at the running backs at this range, I'm taking them over a lot of the wide receivers that are left. But yeah, I'm fine with taking them in the middle of the first. And after Bijan and CMC, JT, he's still the dynasty. Well, I guess him and Saquon, that'll be a close one. But he's still definitely like RB 3 or 4, and it's solid in the top 5 for me.
With the 2-year age gap, you do still put CMC ahead of Jonathan Taylor in dynasty right now?
Yep, I do, because I think CMC is just kind of one of those. He's just not normal human being.
Yeah, that's true.
And I just think his game will age like a lot. Will age a lot better than some of those other guys like Le'Veon, who's getting 400 touches, just ridiculous.
I was gonna say, and it's also he's only 26.
Yeah, like that's still prime age. Yeah, for running backs.
My only issue with McCaffrey is that if you look at his splits with and without Elijah Mitchell on the field,
you brought this up before.
There's a big difference there. And so, I mean, Elijah Mitchell hasn't shown that he can play a 17-game season all the way through healthy. So, like, you're probably still going to get those upside games from McCaffrey. But it does make me wonder if we should be just like slightly decreasing McCaffrey's ADP just because, like, if Mitchell's in every week.
Do you think that has anything to do with him just joining the team though, and kind of like, all right, CMC, he kind of had to learn what he could learn, and Eli kind of picking up what he can? Because I don't like, people don't trade, teams don't trade for running backs anymore. Did I time out? Yeah,
you did. But hey, you got the best wide receiver.
Yeah, you still got.
I'm cool with that. Yeah, I'll take it. Keenan Allen is my wide receiver 5. All right.
Just make sure you turn yourself back off of auto.
Yeah, say it'll keep you on auto.
I mean, yeah, that's a good point. Like, maybe McCaffrey wasn't getting as many touches because he was just learning the offense. But I also just think that San Francisco likes Elijah Mitchell, and it was just one of these like win now moves with Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, that's true. But I was just gonna say that teams typically don't trade for running back. So like the capital what they gave up to get him, I think they want to give him as much work as he can handle. And I'm so used to doing mobile. How do you turn? I can see it.
It should be a big pink
box. The big box at the top, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, if you're on the other side of the coin of that for his dynasty value, even if he does kind of get more into a split, I think that kind of lengthens his career. So instead of being like the RB1 for the next 1 or 2 years and then falling off a cliff, maybe he's just kind of top 5 for
top 10 for the next 5 years, which would be great. And so, no, I think that's a good point. And we've always talked about running backs who are splitting time are more efficient, and efficiency has never been an issue for Christian McCaffrey.
For sure. Yep.
But keeping him healthy is the most important thing, as we've always talked about. So I read the most ridiculous article yesterday, and if I knew the writer's name, it's somebody who writes for the Jets. Or for about the Jets. If I knew the writer's name, I would call them out on their terrible article right now. And this has nothing to do with fantasy football, which I know we normally talk about. But I want your guys' take on this because I felt sick reading it. So they said that the Jets should be the number 1 team to trade for Derrick Henry right now to make Aaron Rodgers happy and for an upgrade over Breece Hall. And I just think that I'm not saying Derrick Henry's not a better running back than Breece Hall. Clearly he is. But this is a real NFL team with money involved. And I think that is the dumbest statement I've ever had written. And this is outside of, Drew, the fact that you drafted Breece Hall.
I say, we already know I'm probably the Breece Hall guy in this
moment. But for real football purposes, Drew, is there something to that? Am I overthinking it? The article went on to like shit on Michael Carter because everybody shits on Michael Carter. But I don't even know that it like Breece Hall looked great when he played football. And I don't know that we should be going in thinking he needs to split time with Derrick Henry. I thought it was just an awful article. So.
I mean, Breece Hall is what dreams are made of. When you think about like running backs that you draft, like the comps as far as what he did his rookie years up there with, Saquon, well, not CMC, but, Saquon and other greats. Hold on, let me.
No, you're fine.
All right, I need a running back. Well, no, I think the reason that the Jets are in such a good position is because they have these guys that are like high caliber players on rookie contracts. So they are like Zach Wilson didn't work out, so they already had to pay up for a QB. So yeah, when you start going out and paying up for these dudes, that's when they run into these situations where they're kind of like these other teams that are starting to age out of their windows that they have to pay players. So I'm with you. It's completely ludicrous.
Austin.
Yeah, I mean, the first problem with this statement is to please Aaron Rodgers. Like we saw last season, what happens when you try and just please your quarterback? This is what happened in Denver. It was all about let's make Russ feel good. Let's let Russ cook. And then they fell apart. So if the Jets are going to get into this world where like we need to please Aaron Rodgers, they're going to suck. That's just the bottom line. And also, why does Aaron Rodgers want Derrick Henry? That would take away his job. You don't need Aaron Rodgers if you have Derrick Henry at that point.
Yeah, I every bit of it. And like I said, it's funny. The part that struck me the worst is the part that I guess I can see the merit to is the upgrade over Breece Hall. I'm like, isn't Breece Hall 21? Let's let him become Breece Hall first. Like, it was just such a bad faith article and that I hated. All right, guys. So this is one I was either going to say for the end of the show, but I'm actually going to throw it at you now. And Drew, you're about to have a pick here in a second, so I'll let you make your pick. But I wanted to play a quick game of keep, trade, cut. And there are 3 running backs who I feel like are in very similar situations. And we talk about them every week. And there's things going on off the field and things going on the field with their age. But I feel like these 3 guys are available way too late in drafts every single mock I've done and in a current startup I'm in. And so I want you guys to do keep, trade, cut, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara. These are guys who have all proven to be top 5 fantasy running backs, honestly, within the last 2 years for each of them. But they're all heading into 26, 27, 28 age seasons. They all have, I don't want to call, I always feel bad lumping Dalvin Cook in with this because his off the field issue is that Minnesota wants to trade him or cut him. That's his only off the field issue. But keep, trade, cut. Austin, I'm going to start with you in this one. Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara.
Okay. So I'm going to keep Dalvin Cook. Going to trade Joe Mixon. No, I'm going to trade Alvin Kamara. I'm going to cut Joe Mixon.
Ooh. Drew, go for it.
All right, this will be good because mine are completely different. I'm keeping Mixon, trading Cook, and cutting Kamara, which that hurts me so bad, man. I've always loved Alvin.
I feel like that's the way. I feel like yours is more the way fantasy's going. But what I want to start with is when I play these keep, trade, cut games in my head or in real life, I'm looking for the one that has the most trade value. Who am I going to be able to move? And in this situation, that's actually the first decision I make is who can I trade who has the most value? And so you had that you were going to, I apologize, Drew. I got it. You're trading keeping Cook. Mixon, trading Cook.
And that's the reason, because I think Cook does has the most value because I think people are kind of, envisioning the scenario where he goes to Miami. And I guess, I don't know if it happens, we'll see, but I think people would increase his value where for me, I think it'll be more of a lateral move. And if anything, maybe even less of a good move. Cause I don't think that offense is going to be built around Dalvin Cook if he does go to Miami, kind of like how it is in Minnesota. So that's the reason I do trade him because I think his value is highest.
And so that's exactly what I was going for there is the allure of the new team. So Austin, you are cutting Kamara, if I remember correctly, and trading.
Well, no, you're cutting Kamara.
Yeah, you're cutting Mixon, trading Kamara. I'm getting confused here.
Hard.
Yeah, but no, let's talk about that. So Austin, when you look at this, do you think there's a trade market for Alvin Kamara in Dynasty right now? Because I certainly do not.
Is there a trade market for Joe Mixon right now? I don't know if there's a trade market for either one of these. So
or any of the 3, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, part of this is it's all about timing. So if as soon as we get the news drop on one of these players, then you make this decision and you have much more information on how to do it. But when I look at Kamara versus Joe Mixon, I'm kind of Kamara, he's still sick. He's Alvin Kamara. So sure, I'll try and trade him. And if I have the choice where I'm choosing between those 3 players, yeah, sure, I'll drop Joe Mixon. I feel like Mixon has always been a little bit more volatile of those 3. He also tends to get hurt pretty frequently, and I don't know. Even though I'm a Falcons fan, I'm yeah, I've been hurt by Alvin Kamara so many times. You gotta show respect and try and trade him.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I see Mixon as the stable. I mean, as long as he stays in Cincy, obviously, he can get cut at any minute. But I mean, if he stays, I think he's going to be the most stable one because he's kind of locked into 20 touches in that high potent offense.
And I have to be honest, I just wrote an article for Football Guys where I basically said that exact same thing. I was looking at it more of a redraft lens, but my whole thing is they didn't draft to replace Mixon. I think the only thing that could affect Mixon is if they want Dalvin Cook. If Dalvin Cook gets cut and the Bengals are no, we want Dalvin Cook. How funny would that be? That messes this game up quite a bit. All right, guys. So that's about the end of my planned question. So I want to actually just start taking a look at the draft. And so we're going to start with Jacob Lundy right from the top. 3 wide receivers, leans into his quarterback, and then starts to go heavy on running backs. So, Drew, when you look at this team, I don't think anyone's going to argue with starting 3 wide receivers, and I don't think anyone's going to argue with starting these 3 wide receivers. But by waiting till his 5th pick to go running back, he ends up with Aaron Jones, Rachaad White, Cam Akers in the 8th, and then James Conner in the 9th. So kind of 2 older guys, 2 younger guys. How do you feel about this build so far in a 1 QB league?
I mean, I like it a lot. I mean, to me, I mixed mine up a little bit more, but to be honest, that was kind of my strategy too for the most part. Just kind of lock up a couple of young elite wide receivers, and then like I said, in startups, man, people just do not want to touch running backs over 24 or 25 years old. So I mean, if you're kind of looking at yourself and trying to compete within that 1 or 2 year window, I think guys like Akers, Mixon, even I'm not sure where Henry went, but even like Derrick Henry, I think he's still
still out there.
I don't think he got picked yet. But yeah, I like that a lot. Just kind of waiting till later to get those running backs because, like we've said 100 times on here before, RB is just so volatile. So you don't want to have a lot of capital in there unless it's kind of one of those elite like I view Breece Hall, Saquon types.
Austin, would you say that Perez's worst mistake was taking Quentin Johnston in the 5th round?
I mean, definitely.
Austin, for those who have not tuned into the show, notorious Quentin Johnston hater. Yeah, and not even that big of a hater, but it has just been the running joke that I have to lean on every single time I get the opportunity.
I mean, taking Quentin Johnston at all, like.
Well, I was about to say, I would take definitely a few guys.
Well, actually, so this is something we talked about last week, and Austin, I'm going to let you get us started on this one. Looking at this team, we kind of talked about the mixing and matching of win now versus win later, if you will. And so this team very much started off on a win now build. Christian McCaffrey, Travis Kelce, Jalen Hurts, Nick Chubb. Then you go Quentin Johnston as your first wide receiver, but then right back to Tony Pollard, J.K. Dobbins, Amari Cooper. Everything about this team screams win now until they started just diving into rookies. And now that I look at it, they have Amari Cooper and 3 rookie wide receivers. How do you feel about, I got to be honest, last week, I kind of let you guys off the hook on this where we talked about having a mixed bag team. I don't like it. Looking at this team right now, the fact that your wide receivers are these unproven rookies and every other part of your team is about winning right now, I don't think it's the right build. I don't like it. Can you convince me otherwise, Austin, even in light of Quentin Johnston being the wide receiver 1?
Yeah, and so we'll just ignore that. But as a as a concept, let's just like replace Quentin Johnston with JSN for the purposes of this conversation. I mean, I think I can build a case that this is a clever way of doing a win 3 years from now strategy where you have acquired assets that you're going to be able to trade away for future picks. And given that we can't like demonstrate that in a mock,
obviously,
I think
that's a good point.
There's the argument you have there. But I agree. If you are trying to win now, I don't think this is the way to go about it just because we have so much unproven talent with the receivers and Quentin Johnston, Jonathan Mingo, and Jayden Reed. I like two of the 3 of those receivers, but I don't think they make a first-year impact. I think this class is going to be more about that 3rd-year leap than what we've seen here recently.
And Drew, I'm just going to have you continue on that same train of thought because I like what Austin brought up about trade value later. But if you're going on a team that, let's be honest, could have very little production at wide receiver, how much trade value you're going to have by trading half of your team away? Like, who are you keeping? I just feel like I don't like the mixed bag. I feel like you either win now or win later. I don't think you can have both. And I understand not having trades in a mock draft makes it hard. But what's your feeling when it comes to that?
No, I'm with you on this too. So like in 1 QB, when I'm building a dynasty team, like wide receiver, like a young, wide receiver core that kind of has that mixture of, both production now, but still that long-term longevity of being young is like ideal here. And again, I'm with you. I think, he has some youth, but I think it's just relying a little bit too much on unproven rookies. And as far as the point of like being able to trade assets later, I mean, his most valuable assets right now are those running backs. And, like we talked about before, those are depreciating assets. Like the best value that they have is right here in this startup. So it will be really hard. Like if the plan, like for example, was to kind of flip the running backs for draft capital, it'd be hard to kind of, get more than what you're getting right now. Cause like I said, you're the first person to pick them. So there's probably not too many people that are higher on those running backs than you are.
And I guess if you're going to make a build like this, Austin, you kind of hit on this point that it's like when 3 years from now is your running backs are already going to die. So at least you have young wide receivers and hopefully they're still going to be a part of your team for 3 years, but there's just so many gambles there. Next thing I want to take a look at, guys, I noticed, 3 teams from now, Southpaw right before you, Drew, but you had already had Kittle. Dalton Kincaid, as if my math is correct, the sixth tight end off the board.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, so you have all the elites going. You have obviously Travis Kelce going very early on in the draft. And then everybody kind of went where you expect them to go. There's an argument of Pitts versus Mark Andrews, but you have Pitts, Andrews, Kittle, TJ Hawkinson. The very next pick is Dalton Kincaid, who has not played a snap in the NFL. How are you on rookie tight ends when it comes to that? And that could have been an auto pick, but still, that means the ADP is putting him there, Drew. How are you when approaching rookie tight ends in a dynasty startup?
For the most part, I fade rookie tight ends, especially kind of the top ones, because it's so rare that they will increase in value to where you can't just trade for them for a lot of times at a little bit of a discount. So I mean, Evan Ingram is like one of the tight ends that have had the best like rookie years of the last decade or so. But like, how many buy windows have you had for Evan Ingram over the last few years? Like,
I mean, you could argue it's only been a buy window because
exactly, that's true.
Value out of it. So.
And even with Pitts, I mean, he was always untouchable. He put up. Did he hit 1,000 as a rookie? Or
he hit 1,000 his rookie year.
As a rookie, and I mean, I don't think a lot of people would say his value has increased at all. Like at best case, you can get the same for him, but even now, I think for the most part, I think for these top end rookie tight ends, you kind of wait for those buy windows.
I want to get Josh's comment before you comment here, Austin. First and foremost, we are not 100% sure that that's actually Stacey Perez. I assume it is, but I've never gotten the confirmation. We just assume it is because it's Dynasty and she's the Dynasty guru over at Fantasy and Frames. If it is Stacey, we'd love to have you on the show to defend your draft, but this was not a great one for you.
Let's talk about it.
It's all love. It's all love. But Austin, just keep going with that where like Dalton Kincaid is the sixth tight end off the board feels really high to me when you have like, I mean, if you're talking a win now team, and I don't know the whole team makeup here, but like Darren Waller goes to a team where he's likely the wide receiver one. You have Chiga Okonkwo, who had a pretty damn good rookie year. And like, we're just betting on Kincaid coming in and just like being better than these guys. And I'm not necessarily saying you should have went Dallas Goedert or Darren Waller ahead here. I'm thinking you should have just waited on tight end. I feel like this is too early for Kincaid.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think people are like doing this thing that we do every year with the lead offenses of like, oh, they drafted this guy, he's the best the next best dynasty asset. And it's just like, okay, let's look at the context of this. Dawson Knox, I just pulled this up according to Over the Cap, just signed a contract that makes him a free agent in 2027. Like, he's going to be around for the next 3 seasons. They just signed him to an extension last year, and then they drafted Kincaid. When was the last time we had a offense that produced 2 elite fantasy tight ends? Like, it doesn't happen. The last example you can go for is Philadelphia with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert.
I was about to say, was it the Patriots?
That's what I was going to say. Was it Patriots with?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Philly. That's the last time.
But even the Philadelphia example, Zach Ertz was hurt part of that year, and that's part of the reason Goddard got the upside he did. So I just think this idea that Kincaid is going to come in and become an elite tight end is short-sighted. Not to mention, like, the first year upside just isn't going to be there because it never is. Kyle Pitts was a unicorn, and Dalton Kincaid is not Kyle Pitts.
Well, and not to mention, Pitts is a unicorn, but that fairy dust is rubbing off a little bit. It's 3 touchdowns total in 2 seasons, and last year his yards per catch and everything dipped terribly. Pitts is almost turning into a cautionary tale versus a unicorn at this point. And I mean, I'm still in on Pitts, but let me just actually keep you guys going. Are you taking Pitts over Andrews, Drew? In dynasty startups?
Man, yeah, I'm probably taking Andrews just because for the most part, I tend to be like, I want to try to win now, like within the next couple of years. I know, like if you're just going into the draft and you're kind of like, all right, 100%, I'm putting this, and you don't want to compete in 3 years. Which, by the way, I'm not knocking that at all. Like, that's how you build super teams. Yeah. But just me personally, I kind of just want to get in and like compete just right away for the most part. And I think Andrews is still like going to be that guy for that. Where with Pitts, we might have to see just a coaching change or even like a team change with the contract just for him to get to that, elite producer like we always wanted to see from him. So that's kind of where I am with it. But yeah, it's close.
It really is. And Austin, I'm going to put you on the spot as a Falcons fan, but I like the fact that Drew said, he's trying to win now, and Andrews is probably the more win now option of the two. But obviously there's hope for Pitts with, Bijan Robinson coming in, hopefully taking some edge off. You're expecting better play out of Desmond Ridder. Pitts versus Andrews in startups, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, I will not go the homer route here as much as I would love to, but I agree. I think it's, oh my God, Tyler Lockett is still on the board. Cool. So I agree. I would take Andrews over Kyle Pitts because I think this is another case of where folks are overreacting. Like last year, it was people were taking Mark Andrews before Travis Kelce in Dynasty Startups. And I think that you could still make that case if you're trying to go like the more longevity. The Baltimore Ravens, they were a 10-win team last year, and they started Tyler Huntley and Anthony Brown down the stretch. Like they just signed Lamar Jackson, and they got a new offensive coordinator who's going to want to pass the ball more. And Mark Andrews is still the wide receiver one in that offense. OBJ is great. He's not going to be the wide receiver one. He's going to be the number 2 option. And Rashad Bateman hasn't proved it yet. Like, yes, Mark Andrews at this point should still be going ahead of Kyle Pitts.
And as Josh knows, Zay Flowers is 5'9" and he's going to be nothing. Nobody's even going to be able to see him on the field. I am a heightist, and I do not like Zay Flowers at all. It's funny.
I mean, I'm fine with Zay, but as far as that wide receiver room, I'm kind of like the cliche answer of just kind of taking whoever falls. As long as Rashad Bateman isn't reached for, because like if I had to put my money on, I would still draft Bateman. So if they're going to be close enough, then Bateman is the one that I would choose. But I do think kind of like the modern NFL kind of allows for those smaller guys to get busy without being like shoved around and stuff like that. So I think I could see a path where Zay, becomes a pretty good fantasy option.
And I liked what I saw out of him from college, but 5'9" just bothers me. And I know it's such a stupid thing, but like I went back and looked at I went back and looked at the top like 15 wide receivers from like the last 3 years, and the bottom is like 5'10". And I'm sorry, he's 1 inch. He's not allowed to ride the top 15 ride. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah.
No. So yes, I'm a Zay Flowers hater, and I'm a 5'9" and below hater. As a guy who is 5'8" tall, I'm allowed to say these things. Guys, we're starting to get towards the end of the draft here. I'm going to give these guys a chance to recap their teams and their builds and their draft strategies. Before we get into that, I'm going to just quickly knock out my oops of the draft. We've already touched on it. This is an oops for the fantasy community in general, not necessarily just Faith, the fantasy community in general. For those that don't know, Faith started off on an auto pick. She did say she would have taken Eckler over Jonathan Taylor, but we have got to stop disrespecting Jonathan Taylor, who is 24 years old in fantasy drafts after coming off of 2 years ago, one of the better seasons we've seen. He was an RB1. He should not be going behind a 28-year-old Austin Eckler in a contract dispute. This is not how we draft in fantasy football. Get it together. Fix Sleeper's ADP immediately. I need Jonathan Taylor.
Out of mind.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really what it comes down to. So that is my oops of the draft, is just the Jonathan Taylor disrespect. Let me get the draft back down here. So Drew, you are going to be coming up to make your last pick here in a second. I'm going to highlight your team and let you kind of get talking, and I'll remind you when it's your pick. What I like to talk about in this is you don't have to go player by player, but there is a player I'm going to ask you about. You don't need to go player by player, but did you have a plan? Did you stick to that plan? Did anybody force you to change your plan? And I did notice you and Austin were the last two to take quarterbacks in this draft, but I actually want to start with CeeDee Lamb. I adore CeeDee Lamb, and I still think the sky is the limit for CeeDee Lamb. And you might be the first person I've seen to make him the third wide receiver taken. I think Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown even tend to go ahead of him in some of these drafts, even Stephon Diggs. Lamb is the third wide receiver. I love it. It's the pick I would have made as well. But talk about CeeDee Lamb and then just kind of give me a rundown of your team.
Yeah, CeeDee is somebody I've always been higher on than consensus. I think I remember even back in rookie drafts, remember that 2020, like that RB class, a lot of like after the first 3 or 4 running backs went, the decision would be like, I think it was like Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins versus like CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. And I was always taking CeeDee Lamb at like 4 or 5 over those running backs. Just because, I mean, I like to bet on guys that win at every level. I mean, like we've seen him win in the SEC, like as a college player. He had the high draft capital. His first couple of years in the league, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure he was like the most productive. Well, no, not in front of Jefferson, but
yeah, real quick, you have your pick. You have 15
after
seconds,
Jefferson, but yeah, again, he's just won at every phase. I mean, I know they added Brandon Cooks this year, but I don't really see him as a target hog to take much away from him. So yeah, and I think one of my favorite wide receiver metrics that I kind of discovered a couple years ago. And I'm kind of rusty on this stuff because I haven't been writing yet for the year, but it's a weighted opportunity, so WOPRs, which is pretty much kind of a combination of both target share and air yards. And he's like for the last couple of years has been at the top. And that's really what you want for fantasy. Like you want guys that are being both targeted down the field and at a high rate. So yeah, I think like a wide receiver 1 or 2 overall is like in his future one of these years. If Chase or Jefferson, if they just have slipped, I think CeeDee Lamb is kind of the next one that'll be nipping at him.
Perfect. And now just like talk about your team build. Was this kind of your idea? I guess the one that sticks out to me is you obviously went very wide receiver heavy, even with the Keenan Allen auto pick, but Breece Hall kind of sticks out like the sore thumb in this. Was that just too much value falling to you in the 2-6, or do you like to start wide receiver running back?
I kind of like I get most people will call it like the hero running back. So get you one solid young, work. I think workhorse is kind of overused for fantasy, but one back that is kind of guaranteed those 15 to 20 touches per week, and then after that, hammer the wide receiver position, because again, that's going to be the most volatile for fantasy teams and kind of give you that long-term stability and value. So even if things kind of go bad at the start of the year and I need to punt a little bit, I can kind of trade off some of these older guys like maybe like Keenan Allen. Hopefully he'll have some value for contenders, Sanders, but I'll still kind of have that young core of Olave and Smith and Jigba that a few years down the road, once I am kind of ready to reload, they'll still kind of be hitting their primes.
You're never going to get any pushback from me talking positively about Keenan Allen. In that same article I was writing about Joe Mixon, I don't think people realize how good Keenan Allen was when he played last year. He averaged 9 targets a game, and he was a top 5 wide receiver when he played football last year. And I don't think you're going to see a major change and push away from him in this offense where Mike Williams and Quentin Johnston are going to be on the outside. Keenan Allen is still the slot guy. Keenan Allen is still 9 targets a game. I think it's going to be a very big year for Keenan Allen.
And a comparison I kind of like to make for him, I mean, not that they're exactly like as players, but just in general, because I know a lot of times when receivers hit that, that 30-year mark, people start fading them. But if you look at guys like Larry Fitzgerald that, kind of stayed, at least later in his career, kind of throughout the slot, playing that role, just a position receiver. I mean, he was still putting up numbers up into his mid-30s. So I still think we got a couple years with Allen.
You land Anthony Richardson and Tua Tagovailoa in a dynasty single QB in the 11th and 13th rounds. I don't think you could have asked for anything to go better than that at your quarterback position, could you have?
Exactly. So obviously, Richardson, that was kind of just the upside pick for, if he does end up being the next Cam Newton. And then Tua is kind of like that backup plan in case he starts slow. But typically I would not take 2 quarterbacks in a 1 QB. That's just kind of how it felt.
These would be the 2 I would go with, though. And
they kind of pair nicely.
And Tua tied to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I love. And my last question to you, is there hope for Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Yes, man. I was just like looking at what was left on the board. I would just kind of imagine scenarios for like, all right, who could really just kind of shock us and surprise us? And I mean, who knows, man? Like if Pacheco, goes down at the start of the year. I know there have also been kind of some narratives about Clyde just having health issues that we may necessarily not have known about.
The last thing last year was
that was the 2 years ago. And even I want to say like last year he might have been dealing with some stuff too. But I mean, it's in that Chiefs offense. Like that's just kind of see what happens pick.
I'm rooting for him. I hope it happens.
That's a good word. I'm not betting on it, but I'm rooting for him.
I do want to quickly throw out, because we didn't talk about it, but you guys have heard me say it every week. In a standard dynasty draft, we would be going long past the 15th round, but I like to try to get everybody out of here in about an hour. You would typically go 20, 25, even 30 picks. I know Josh plays in a league where there are 45 guys rostered, and I'm talking an all offensive league, not even defensive. Like it's an insane, like 45-person league and like a 10 or a 12-team league. It's nuts. You need to know some names. So we would go past the 15th, but that's just not how it happens on the show. Austin, you also went hero running back. Was that by design picking at the end, or is that just how it felt to you?
Yeah, when I saw this was a 10-team league, I decided I'm going to go as long as I can without getting a quarterback and see how it goes. And then I decided to not reach on Travis Kelce at at the first round 1-2 turn, which I would typically do, but I just wanted to see like, okay, what happens if I play out this tight end situation? So I love my receivers. This is incredible.
It'd be hard not to.
I'm gonna win this year. Like, come on. Like,
let's start this. I wish we made this as a league.
Oh my God, no.
So like Deontay Johnson is a good, interesting name on here. Like the fact he's fallen to the 7th round, like y'all, come on. He's not gonna score 0 touchdowns again. It's gonna be better. He's like perennially a top 30 receiver, and he's my wide receiver 6. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Then after that, it was just kind of like, okay, cool. I can just take my favorite players, and there was decent running back depth. I also am like still confused about the Daniel Jones hate. Like he was I was the last team to take a quarterback, because as soon as I saw Drew take Anthony Richardson and then Faith take Trey Lance, I was like, okay, I gotta take my quarterback now because it's about to get ugly. And so I took Daniel Jones. He was the 9th best fantasy quarterback last year, and
25 years old, if I remember correctly. Like, I know it seems like he's been around forever, but
like, yeah, sure, the few years before that weren't great, but the New York Giants just signed him to a $40 million a year contract extension, and he has Brian Daboll there as the head coach. So I have faith that he's going to be fine. And there's enough quarterbacks on the waivers right now at this point that I'm like, yeah, cool. I'll take Daniel Jones. Like, he should not be the last quarterback drafted, but hey, if you come away with him in the 11th round, I feel great about that.
Last thing I'm going to ask you about before we get out of here, Brian Robinson. I have been trying to figure out what my own take on Brian Robinson is, so I'm just going to steal yours. So right now, there's been a lot of positive things being said about Antonio Gibson, which is very different than last year, coming out of Commanders camp. And then they did draft Chris Rodriguez in the 6th or 7th round. Pretty clearly going to be the 3rd running back there, but Brian Robinson was pretty good and handled way more work last year than we expected from a gunshot victim. So are we expecting a big 2nd year for Brian Robinson in Washington?
I mean, that's what I'm betting on. I have him in our Club Dynasty League because I'm like, yeah, who's standing in his way? Antonio Gibson, the guy that 2 years ago we said could be Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Really? Oops. Like that didn't pan out. And I don't see it with with Antonio Gibson in Washington. Like, maybe he bounces back this year, but as far as I'm concerned, Brian Robinson is the number 1, and they have Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett as their quarterbacks. I think Brissett's probably the starter, and he's going to be a game manager, and Brian Robinson should be able to carry the load. So I like it. He's young. He only has 1 year, and the thing about him not starting off the season playing is he didn't get overutilized in his first year. So his legs are still pretty fresh, and I feel like the injury risk is fairly low given that background.
Yeah. Josh chiming in that Robinson's the new Damian Harris. You better hope for touchdowns because he's not going to catch a pass. Oh, and Drew likes the comp. If Drew likes the comp, it's good comp.
Well, has the chance to be like the Ramondre that kind of breaks out because he's the receiver. I actually took Gibson the next round in this draft, so I'm putting money on him.
I do want to quickly throw to our buddy Dice Dealer. I absolutely love that you remembered this from a few drafts ago. I used to pause before like the last pick, so these guys could tell me who they would be looking for. There would be still 10 rounds of drafting, so we don't need to talk about any of that. Dice Dealer is going to be on the show in a couple of weeks, so I'm pretty excited about that. But that was a really fun draft, guys. I thank you guys so much. So first and foremost, Drew, I know you said you're not doing a ton of work right now, but tell people where they can find your takes, because one thing I will say about Drew is even when he's not writing articles, Drew, you are one of the most active Twitter follows when it comes to fantasy football in the world. You interact with everybody. You jump on posts. But more importantly, I don't think there's a person in fantasy Twitter who doesn't like you because of the respect you show on posts. So I love the way you carry yourself. It's always nice to see because you have very, very great discussions where nobody gets disrespectful, and we don't see that a lot on fantasy Twitter.
Appreciate that. When I'm on Twitter, I always like to treat people as if I'm like talking to them face to face.
Yeah,
and I think more people should take that approach. Man, like if you're not just gonna say this to somebody, like sitting in front of them, like no, don't type it out and be the tough guy. So yeah, no, appreciate that. But yeah, I'm at DrewMet_FF. Like I said, I haven't been writing much, but I'll definitely starting out some stuff with Club Fantasy over the summer. So just look out for us.
Now we look forward to it. Austin, tell everybody bye. Tell what you're working on.
Yeah, you can catch me on Twitter and Instagram at Austin_FFL. I'll be working on some of our Look Inside articles coming up recently. Gonna have one coming out on Jonathan Taylor next week.
Ooh. Yeah. Looking forward to that one. Speaking of our Look Inside articles, the first one is actually going to be dropping in about an hour today. We had Michael Sicoli take a look at Miles Sanders for the Carolina Panthers. So if you're not familiar with our Look Inside series, you're going to get familiar with it here in the next couple of weeks. We have our writers highlight one player from every team. We are going to go through all 32 teams, and then either Josh or myself do a recap of every other fantasy relevant player at the end of the articles. And every episode of No Pun Intended for the next 10 episodes is going to be covering the teams in the NFL. We will cover all 32 teams, our guys, the players we like, the players we don't like, and that's all kicking off this week as well. So let's get some of this outro stuff done. Dynasty After Party aired last night, and if you needed more Dynasty Startup advice, that's what every bit of the show was about last night with Joel and Sicoli. So make sure you tune into that. If you didn't get a chance to check it out last night live at 9:30, that's every Sunday at 9:30 Eastern, and that's available on our YouTube right now. Obviously, we have our golf show. If you're just a huge gambling degenerate and you need more than fantasy football, we covered golf DFS too with Kelly and Adam. They have been doing so well. Kelly actually just posted a picture showing how well all of her picks did this past week. This isn't cap. She puts it all on air. I think she even puts it out in written form. They are winning people money. They just doubled Josh's money a few weeks ago. If you are into golf DFS, you need to be watching this show. And as I alluded to, no pun intended, switches over to our Look Inside series this week, where we are going to have Andrew Cooper from Better Sports, Fantasy Alarm, and Lightning Round Fantasy with us to cover the Carolina Panthers, Houston Texans, and Arizona Cardinals. That show is going to be live. We are finally back on our live schedule Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, so make sure you tune in for that. Andrew Cooper is one of the preeminent voices when it comes to fantasy tight ends, and Josh is really leaning into that. So we're going to be talking a lot of fantasy tight ends from these teams. I want to hear what his take is on Trey McBride. Is this guy finally going to pop in season 2? And as always, this show will be back next Monday. We are finally getting out of dynasty mode altogether. It is our first best ball mock of the season, and we're going to have another voice from Club Fantasy, Chris Molina, who loves underdog and loves everything about finding the edges. I think Austin and Chris are going to make for a great show because I think these guys might be the only people I know who are already doing best ball drafts. We do everything to the standards of underdog. So if you've been thinking about dipping your toe in underdog and best ball mania and all that kind of fun stuff, yeah, we're going to have that draft going on next week. So that is the end of the show. For Austin, for Drew, I am your host, Ryan. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back next week. Always remember that defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football, and practice makes perfect. We will see you at the next mock draft.
See you.